Good evening to all of you. Am I audible? Good evening, all of you. Am I audible? Just let me know if you can see me clearly, hear me clearly, guys. If a few of you are present on the platform, let me know if you can hear me properly. Okay, so that's great. I've got a thumbs up. I am audible to all of you. So can we start the session? I think let a few more of you join the platform, then we can start the discussion for the day. Aditi, oh, you can hear me. I think Aditi is here. Good evening, Aditi. I hope you people are doing good. Aditi, how are you doing? The others, how are you doing? Keep talking to me. That is a big boost for us people out here at BYJU'S Exam Prep. We love talking to our students. Pooja, good evening, Pooja. I hope you're doing good. Super. Quite a few are already in the classroom. So today we are going to discuss a very important and interesting topic. It is going to be some of the chapters on logical reasoning, the question pattern and the concepts, and I hope you will enjoy the session today. So this is your last lab to CAT 21 Verbal Logic. I am Pradeep Sengupta and I welcome you all to today's session. On behalf of BYJU'S Exam Prep, let me wish you all the very best for your CAT. We are absolutely right at the mouth of the cave, ready to enter and make history. So with that being said, Sandhya, good evening. How are you? Okay. So let us start the session slowly. We will set the ball rolling. And this is what the schedule looks like. Last lab to CAT, every day 7 p.m. we are going live with you so that you don't miss out on the important concepts. Today it's going to be my session, Verbal Logic Made Easy. My name is Pradeep Sengupta. It is 11. Tomorrow you have numbers. Then again you have VARC Crasher. It is going to be a very engrossing session by Savitri ma'am. Pranav sir is there. Gaurav sir will take care of your DILR. Modern Maths by Vikas sir. Gautam sir will take up CAT 21 Q&A, QA Decoded. Saral sir will take up replica of CAT paper. Gautam sir again will be there with you on the 21st. 7 days to CAT. So you are going to get a perfect hand holding from our side. We are not going to leave you alone. Remember, in this journey, we all are together and we want your success. We want that all of you be successful and make all of us proud. So go 100 percentile. With that hope, let us start the session today. Sandhya. Okay, so quite a few people are already here. So am I live on both app and YouTube? If you just give me a thumbs up on that. Can you hear me? My app students, my UT student, YT students, YouTube students, can you hear me both? All of you? Just give me a thumbs up and I'll get to know. Okay, so these are the sessions. We have already covered quite a few chapters and quite a few concepts already in English, Maths, DILR and Reasoning, and we are going to continue with the good work so that you people don't have any complaints and any doubt before you go and write your CAT exam. Okay. So today's topic, let me give you a brief input into why we are going to have this topic today. Remember, it is not just CAT. We have the other exams coming up. They are in the offing. We have NMAT coming up, SNAP coming up, MAT is also there. So in such exams, the logic part, part, the verbal logic part, they become quintessential. So what is the idea? The idea is to get going and understand the basics that we have learned already, the kinds of questions that you're going to face in these exams, what are the concepts going to be, and what kind of tricks are we going to apply in order to get through these questions absolutely confidently, right? So if you are attempting around 7 questions, 6 questions, the idea is to get around 6 of them right, and that will be an add-on to our net score. Okay, so this is the agenda and the rationale behind today's session. And what are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about quite a few things. Sudipta, this session is going to be for CAT. You will understand quite a few things for on analytical reasoning. Also, this session is going to be important for all those who are going to attempt IIFT, ZAT, NMAT and SNAP. Alright, so this session is dedicated to some of the questions that we would discuss in the verbal logic category. So what are the topics that we will discuss today? So here comes some of the delectations, right? Serving on the platter, we have statement assumption questions, how to go about in answering these questions in no time, so that you think less, you think more, and you answer the questions, right? With confidence, with ease and quickly. Statement conclusion is yet another section that we are going to cover broadly. We'll talk about course of action questions, strengthening and weakening arguments, cause and effect, strong and weak argument, and syllogisms. So these are some of the areas, that's how we are going to be placed, and these are some of the areas we are going to touch base in the next couple of minutes. All right. So without any further ado, let us start talking about statement, assumption, and conclusion based questions. Statement, assumption, conclusion, they are the 3 pillars of analytical reasoning questions. All right. So what happens? You have a question in front of you. Question is followed by certain conclusions, and we have to find out the argument or the assumptions. If you look at the very first question, it says Rio should not be allowed to play in the team because he did not score a century. Okay, you just pass a random statement. You say this guy should not be allowed to play in the team because he did not score a century. All right. Look at what the argument has to say. It says the argument has a premise and a conclusion. This is the part of an argument. It has to have a premise. Premise is a sentence, the fact or the truthfulness of which cannot be refuted. तुम उसको challenge नहीं कर सकते हो. If I say all apples are guavas, that is a premise, right? Although it is absurd, it does not make any sense in the real life, but when it comes to reasoning, everything makes sense. तुम्हें situation analysis करना पड़ेगा. You have to analyze the situation comprehensively and with proper thinking. So premise is something which cannot be refuted, which cannot be challenged. So any argument would have a premise, and from the premise flows the conclusion. X, therefore Y. So this therefore is important. Okay. X, therefore Y. We will try and understand this with the help of several examples over here. But the argument, you have to drive home the point that what is the argument? Like in this question, Rio should not be allowed to play in the team because he did not score a century. How do we bifurcate the sentence? How do we understand the sentence? What actually is the contention, right? So if you look at the sentence, broadly speaking, it has 2 parts, right? You can divide the sentence into 2 parts. As you can see, what are we saying? Rio should not be allowed to play cricket. Why? Because he did not score a century. So how do you break it? Since Rio did not score a century, therefore he should not be allowed to play in the team. Since he did not score a century, therefore he should not be allowed to play in the team. So what is it? What does it talk about? Therefore, so this gives you a conclusion, and the first part, Rio did not score a century, is an argument. So look at the consideration over here. What does it see? People who do not, what does it show? It shows people who do not score a century should not be allowed to play in the team. So this assumption, it supports the argument. Was it said? It was not said. So what is an assumption? Assumption is a hidden premise. So anything that you see in front of you, if a sentence is factual and it is written, then it is a premise. But if the premise is absent, but it is obvious, it goes without saying, it is taken for granted, that becomes an assumption. So what is an assumption? A hidden premise, a very, very important part of the argument. I hope you have understood this. Vismay, very good evening. I hope you're doing well. Raha, good evening. Good evening, all of you. Stay with us and we are going to have fun in today's session, all of you. All right? With that being said, can we move to a few questions on statement assumption? Okay? Let us see if we could solve a few questions. Right? I am going to, just let me know if you can see the question with my image being in the frame. Is the question, can you see the question? Or let me hide myself. Okay. So you have a question in front of you. What does it tell you? It says, in the question below, a statement is followed by two assumptions numbered 1 and 2. You have to consider the statement and the following assumptions and decide which of the assumption is implicit in the statement. Implicit means that which can be concluded, that which can be construed and interpreted, right? The statement which can be interpreted is implicit. All right. Explicit means it is mentioned. Implicit means although it is not mentioned, but it stands to be there. That is an implicit statement. So what is the question? The question is, the Minister of Environment, Forests and Climate Change left on Monday for Glasgow to attend the UN Climate Summit to be held on Wednesday. Fair enough? So there are two assumptions. The first assumption is the minister may reach home on Friday. The second assumption is the minister may reach Glasgow on Tuesday. Okay. So you have to find out which assumption should it follow. Right? A, B, C and D. Alright. What are the statements which are implicit? A says both assumptions 1 and 2 are implicit. Both stems out from the question, from the assumption. B says only assumption 2 is implicit. C says neither assumption 1 or 2 is implicit, and D says assumption 1 is implicit. So we are going to take a few minutes, right? Just take a minute's time and answer the question, and then we will open the platform for discussion. All right. Okay. So the answers are coming up in no time. All right. So from the question, it is absolutely, you can figure it out that option B, only assumption 2 is implicit, because over here it is mentioned that the minister left on Monday for Glasgow to attend a summit at the UN climate summit to be held on Wednesday, which means the minister may reach Glasgow on Tuesday. This flows out from the statement, but whether he should reach home by Friday, this is something which cannot be interpreted or concluded from the given statement. So only statement 2 is implicit, the first one is not. So this was one very fine example to help you understand how to actually understand the implicit statements and how to go about with the questions. Okay, can we look at one more question very quickly? So what was the question? The question was, there is a statement followed by two assumptions. Consider the statement and the following. Consider the statement and the following assumptions and decide which of the assumption is implicit. Okay. So what is the case that we have in hand? The case is the principal of St. Joseph's High School is planning to take a long leave of absence to take care of her ailing father. She is going to be absent for quite some time, and the glitch is, the problem is, the vice principal has recently resigned, a new person has not been appointed, the principal has requested the senior most teacher to take over the administration. Okay, so these are the takeaways from the statement. So, okay, the students are very quick to answer D. So most of you have gone with A, one of you have gone with D. Let us check the assumptions. The assumptions are, the senior most teacher is capable of stepping into the role of the principal. We have to check the facts. Okay, had the teacher not been capable, the principal would not have asked her to take over the administration. That is the first place. The second one says, the senior teacher may not accept the principal's request. Now this sounds a bit illogical, because if a principal is requesting somebody, to take up a responsibility, now that comes to the teacher as an honor, and the teacher should not find it absolutely unreasonable not to take up that role. All right. So 2 does not make any sense. Over here, the answer should be A, only 1 is implicit. So the questions are going to be pretty straightforward. Okay, so you can get the maximum mileage out of these questions. You just have to look at the question, understand the logic, and get the answers. Okay, so it is not going to be very tough. Tricky, yes, but not tough. Okay, so these questions were absolutely easy for you to answer, right? Similarly, we can see through at least 10 to 12 questions in no time, provided you have the trick and the logic in place. All right, can we look at one more question? Okay, I hope you people have understood why A should be the answer. Okay, let's look at one more question, guys. All right, how about this one? This is the question. Which of the following is an assumption on which the argument depends? The passage will talk about an argument. You have to find out. All right. Okay, can we begin the discussion? Let us get going with the discussion, guys. Okay, the question is, in many schools in India, children in primary school spend about 45 minutes a day in traditional stretching and breathing exercises. Fair enough. In Europe and the United States, however, there is no time devoted to an exclusive daily stretching and breathing exercise class. Children in India outperform their European and American counterparts in cardiovascular tests. Look at the premise over here. Children in India outperform their European and American counterparts in cardiovascular test, right? And the first line says, in many schools in India, children in primary school spend about 45 minutes a day in traditional stretching and breathing exercise. Therefore, what is the conclusion? That children in Europe and America can achieve cardiovascular fitness only by engaging in a daily school program of stretching and breathing exercises. So, what is the contention? What has the author assumed over here, right? What is the assumption, the hidden premise? Something which the author is thinking, basis which he has stated this passage and this argument, all right? What does A say? A says, a daily program of stretching and exercise will allow all students to achieve cardiovascular fitness. B says, lack of cardiovascular fitness can pose severe health issues. C says, children who participate in the daily breathing and stretching program are fitter than adults. And D says, stretching and breathing are integral components of Indian children's superior cardiovascular fitness. So let us try and analyze the facts. What are the facts? Can we analyze the facts over here? In the passage, what are we talking about? Right? What are we talking about in the passage? Let me bring myself back. The passage talks about Indian children or schools in India, right? The passage talks about the students in Europe and United States. That's what the passage is talking about, right? So there are three places primarily that we are actually focusing on: India, Europe, United States. India, Europe, United States. And what are we talking about? Children in India, they follow a fitness regime, right? They follow a program of stretching and breathing exercises, and that is the reason why they have been able to get the better of their European and US counterparts. A talks about a daily program of stretching and exercise will allow all students. Now, all students is pretty generic. It is not specific. We should have restricted our talks to India, Europe, and United States. So this cannot be the assumption of the author. All right. B says lack of cardiovascular fitness can pose severe health issues. May be true, but to whom? Aren't we talking about the children? Or are we talking about people in general? No, it is very, very specific. So on that ground, even B cannot be the assumption. All right. Deepak says A. Now, I think Deepak, you understand why A cannot be the assumption there. C says children who participate in daily breathing and stretching program are fitter than adults, right? Quite so, it is right, but are we talking about children in general, or are we talking about children from India, Europe, and the US? Right? So even C is not going to be the assumption. The answer over here should be D. Children stretching and breathing are integral components of Indian children's superior cardiovascular fitness. This was the assumption made by the author. Okay? The rest were absolutely out. They were not going to be a choice for the assumption question. D was the better choice. Okay. Now you know the reason why. All right. So just keep your, thinking cap on, analyze, keep on analyzing. Okay. It is a test of logic. See, English is not being tested over here, right? Logic, connecting the dots. How good you are at driving home logic and facts, right? Think and think. Think in terms of premises. Think in terms of conclusions. Think in terms of assumptions. What is the assumption made by the author? What is the argument by the author? And does the option that I pick or choose, does it fall into the category of being a legit assumption or a legit argument? So when you keep talking to yourself in these lines, you will be able to drive home the answer in no time. All right. With that being said, can we look at one more question? Right? Now over here, we have spoken about a few assumption questions. Now we will talk about a few conclusion questions. Now what is conclusion? X, therefore Y. All right? X, therefore Y. So Y happens because X has happened. So this is what we are going to talk about over here. Okay? The assumption based questions. All right? So here we go. Let us look at this question. Okay, I'll give you a minute's time to think over and then I'll start talking to you. Okay, let me hide myself so that you can see the question. Okay, let's understand what the question is, right? We will go a bit faster because we are not going to talk about the concepts. We'll just see how to handle the question smartly. Okay, the question tells you in the following question, a statement is followed by two conclusions. In the previous questions, we saw that a statement was being followed by assumptions. Over here, we have conclusions numbered 1 and 2. Assume everything in the statement to be true. This should ring a bell. Right? You have to assume that whatever the statement has to tell you is absolutely true. वो 100% सच है, उसको हम refute नहीं करेंगे, उसको हम challenge नहीं करेंगे. Then consider the two conclusions and decide which of them logically follows from the information given in the statement. Remember, logic is the word. It has to flow logically from the statement. Right? What is the statement? Let us see. The statement is, a serious accident took place in the city last night. Okay, not a good thing. Nevertheless. And what happened in the accident? Two motorcyclists had a head-on collision while trying to avoid a pothole. Okay, leaving themselves and many others injured. The accident once again gave rise to outrage and debate on the dangers posed by the dismal condition of the roads in the city. एक बार फिर हमने डिबेट करना शुरू किया. Look at the term once again. मतलब इससे पहले भी होता रहा है डिबेट. एक बार फिर से डिबेट शुरू हो गया. About what? About the dangers posed by the dismal, pathetic condition of the roads in the city. So you have a couple of takeaways from the question. The question talks about an accident that took place. Two motorcyclists were injured, and how were they injured? They were trying to avoid a pothole, which means potholes are present in the road, and that tells you the very sorry picture of the roads of that place, right? So we are talking about dangers posed by the dismal condition. How do you know that the roads are in dismal condition? The presence of potholes. All right. Conclusion is, the poor condition of the roads in the city have led to accidents in the past. Can this be driven home? Can this conclusion be driven home, guys? And 2 says, potholes in roads can cause serious accidents. If you see the question properly, we are talking about poor conditions of roads, which the statement talks about, right? And haven't they led to accidents? The presence of pothole loudly speaks of that, right? It bears a testimony to the fact that the roads are not in good shape. Potholes in the roads can cause accidents. That's point number 2. And we have seen that potholes may cause accidents. The statement loudly talks about it, which means the option should have been C. Both conclusions follow, and all of you got this one right. Congratulations to all of you. This is how we must drive home the point. 4th one was easy. You could do it hands down. it was an easy question, right? When you do something by understanding the concepts, the things become absolutely easy for you. Okay? Yes, Daniel, the answer is 3. Bang on target. All right. So fourth one is done. Can we move on to the next question quickly? The idea is to do as many questions as possible in no time. All right. Let's look at question number 5. So what is the statement? The statement says, the chairman of the Civil Services Board has admitted that despite all efforts to make the selection fair and effective, the interview panel may select a candidate who does not have the right attitude or aptitude for job. Okay. So over here, the chairman of the Civil Services Board, he concedes something. He admits. Okay, what does he admit? He admits that despite all efforts, look at these words, admits, despite. So the chairman is helpless. He knows that in spite of all the efforts to do what? To make the selection fair and effective, there are chances that the interview panel may select a candidate who does not have the right attitude or aptitude for the job. So if the interview panel is selecting somebody who is not worthy enough, then there is a question mark on the efficacy, on the fairness and fairness of the panel, of the interview panel, or the efforts being taken on the part of the chairman. Conclusions are, the interview process cannot guarantee that the selection will be proper. And 2 says, the interview process has limitations. Demerits. It is full of demerits and limitations. So the interview process cannot guarantee. Of course, we have seen that. Okay. The chairman has already admitted that despite all the efforts, the interview panel may select a guy who is not worthy enough. Doesn't that mean, therefore, can we conclude that the interview process has limitations? Of course, we can conclude that the interview process has limitations. Hence, the answer choice should have been C, both conclusions follow. This should have been the answer choice, right? Most of you have answered A. Please, I would like to bring your attention back to the question, guys. Okay? What was the question? The question was, the statement was, the chairman of the Civil Services Board has admitted. वो मान रहा है, क्या मान रहा है? Despite all efforts, सारे efforts के बावजूद. Okay? Please understand how the tone of the sentence will take you to the conclusion. Okay? Please follow the tone. Admitted that despite all efforts to make the selection fair and effective, the interview panel may select a candidate who does not have the right attitude or aptitude for the job. That speaks, about the, what should I say? The ineptitude or the incapability of the interview panel. So the interview process, in itself, can it guarantee the selection to be proper? No. Basis this, the interview process has limitations, may select a candidate who does not have the right attitude. Yes. So do they not lead you to option C, guys? Okay, this should have been the answer choice. Okay, I hope it makes sense, right? Why A should not be the only conclusion. 2 should also follow. It is not just 1, 2 should also follow. So C should have been the answer choice for this question. All right. So please think properly before you plunge into, selecting an option, right? Please don't go after a wild goose chase, right? Think, stop, think, and then try to figure out the option. All right. There is nothing to worry. There is no need to rush at all. Take your time. If you have selected one, just find out, check the parameters, why 2 should not be or should be the option. Okay. Let us see if both the options fit the bill or not. Okay. That will take you to the right option and the right answer choice. Okay. Can we look at one more question? Now we will discuss this is not a tricky one, but then I think you should be able to follow this question hands down. You will be able to do this question hands down. Okay. Let us check this one out. What is the statement, guys? The statement says, again, it is a statement conclusion question. The statement says, all higher educational institutions in the country have started counseling cells. Okay. Under orders from the Education Ministry to help students in stress management. So what is the premise? What is the information that we're getting? The higher educational institutions in the country have started counseling cells under orders from the Education Ministry to help students in stress management. All right, so this is the statement. These are the two conclusions. The first conclusion is the higher educational institutions have the necessary resources to run such cells. 2 says hospitals don't have the resources to counsel students. Hang on. In the question, we don't find any mention of this word, do we? Hospitals are not mentioned. This word is not mentioned in the question. So this cannot be the conclusion. It stands for outright elimination. So 2 is a goner. We are not going to even think of 2. So we are left with 1 only. The higher education institutions have the necessary resources. Of course, if they did not have the necessary resources, they would not have started the counseling cells in the first place. Since they have the resources, that is why they have thought of starting the, this counseling cells. So, which means the option should have been A, only conclusion 1 follows. All right. Okay. So this should have been the option. A follows. All right. So A was the right option. So this is how conclusion based questions are actually solved. So we have seen assumption questions, we have seen conclusion questions. Now let us do a few different type of questions. This is going to be course of action questions. Remember, such questions are an inevitable part of, integral part of questions like NMAT and SNAP and TISS. You may find such questions being asked in these exams. Okay, so course of action. Let's talk about course of action. What is course of action? Right? Course of action is you are given a problem. You have to do a situation analysis of the problem, and then you have to suggest what is the way out. You have to give solutions to the problem. Okay, and the solutions must be practical. The solutions must be logical. Right? It should not be extreme steps. Right? Like, you cannot thrash a person. That is not a solution. You cannot kill a person. You cannot abuse a person. That cannot be a solution, right? And solutions are not assumptions. Solutions are not conclusions. Okay, it has to be a viable solution that you could give to the person who is actually facing the problems. All right. So let us see a few questions on course of action questions. This is question number 7. Can we solve it? What is the statement? The statement is more than 100 people have died because of waterborne diseases in a village as the river, which is the only source of water for the residents, is contaminated with chemicals. Right? Again, in this question, guys, you have to assume everything in the statement to be true. So we are assuming that people have died, it's a fact. Because of waterborne disease, it's a fact. Because the river, which was the only source of water, was found contaminated with chemicals. So these are the facts. So the village is grappling with a serious problem. Okay. And the courses of action suggested here are: 1. Anyone found drinking water from the river should be heavily penalized. Now, what is the problem? The problem is the water is contaminated and people don't have water to drink and people are dying, right? So if you are penalizing a person who has already, consumed water from the river, will anyway die. So what is there to punish him for, right? 2 says the local authorities should immediately arrange for tankers for potable water. This sounds a practical solution to the problem. Okay, so in this case, the answer should have been B. Only course of action 2 follows. That is how this is the step by step. We will first of all understand the problem in the statement, and then we will try to figure out the solution to the given problem. The solution will be right there in front of you. You just have to pick and choose the best course of action, right? Can we do a question exactly on the same concept? Let us look at this question. Saurabh, definitely you got it right. Daniel got it right. Deepak got it right. Congratulations. Yes, all of you got the answers right. Please look at this question, guys. The 8th one. Read the statement, read the courses of action. Alright, so what is the statement? The statement is: few residents of Super County apartment discovered that Mr. Sirius, living in flat number 007, runs a sex racket from his flat. Okay, that's gross. Courses of action suggested are: 1. The residents should ask Sirius for money in order to keep mum about the sex racket. 2 says the resident should catch Sirius red-handed and throw him out of Super County apartment. Which one do you think should be the proper course of action? Okay. B, B, D, all right. Anybody else would like to answer the question? D, all right. D, B, all right. So Mr. Sirius he runs a sex racket. All right. Now either the resident should ask Sirius for money. that will make the residents equally corrupt. Don't you think so? Right? This is no course of action. Is this a remedy? Right? Or if the residents catch serious red-handed and throw him out from the super county apartments, he can go to XYZ apartment and he can resume his business from there. So it is not a remedy. The remedy cannot be extreme. In these two cases, these are extreme courses of action. Remember, I told you the courses of actions cannot be extreme. Asking for money, that is gross, that's utterly foolish, right? And throwing somebody out does not solve the problem. So in this case, the answer should have been D, neither course of action follows, right? This is the practical answer over here. Neither courses of action follows over here, okay? So both these actions, both these remedial steps, they don't hold water at all. They are not practical, right? That is why the answer over here should have been D, neither course of action follows, right? Let's look at one more question on the similar lines. Okay. Now over here we have some different types of questions to cater to, right? We'll talk about now strengthening and weakening arguments, all right? Now what happens over here is an argument is given to you, okay? And there are some external points provided to you, okay? Based on the points, you have to see whether the arguments stated in the passage, whether the points, the external points, whether they support the arguments or whether they make the arguments weak. So strengthening and weakening arguments, let us see what are the parameters, okay? Over here, the parameters talk about strengthening the argument is nothing but picking an external statement to add support to the author's argument. You pick up an external idea to give support to the author, or the same external idea can be used to find a flaw in the author's argument. So either you find a flaw and weaken the author's argument, or you find a support and strengthen the author's argument. So based on the external support, means the options, you have to check, you have to test with each and every option whether they support the author's contention or whether they debilitate or weaken the author's contention. So can we have a look at some of the questions? Right? Please look at this question. Ketki, you have given the exact course of action. That gentleman should be handed over to the police and he should be put behind the bars for such nefarious activities. Absolutely right you are. Please pay attention to the question. It says, which of the following, if true, would strengthen the proposal of the management? That's what it says. Here comes the first response from Daniel. He says B. What about the others, guys? Please very quickly key in the answer. We will try to solve the questions in no time. Okay. Let us read the question carefully. It says, as part of the widening of the main road outside the Indira Nagar Commercial Street Shopping Centre, the management is planning to move the entrance from its current location to a low-rent adjoining side street and renovating it and leasing the current entrance to space to a renowned restaurant chain. In that way, the shopping center could easily pay for all renovation without too much impact on its budget, which has shrunk during the pandemic. So, what is the proposal? The proposal is the management of Indira Commercial Street Shopping Center, they are planning to move the entrance from its current location to a low rent adjoining side street and renovating it and leasing the current entrance to a renowned restaurant chain. In that way, the shopping center could easily pay for all renovation without too much impact on its budget. So these are the small takeaways from the sentence, all right, from the statement. Question was, which of the following, if true, would strengthen the proposal? If this is the proposal, you have to support it. Which option supports the proposal, right? Now, the entrance to any commercial joint, any commercial building is the key to its business, okay? The entrance is the key to its business. A says, most customers of the shopping center visit places located on Indira Nagar Commercial Street than those located in the adjoining street. Does it strengthen? Does it strengthen the proposal? Right? B says, a reliable survey of the Indira Nagar shoppers showed that none of the regular shoppers would use the side entrance any less frequently if the shopping center's entrance were removed. Look at this part. None of the regular shoppers would use the side entrance any less. It means it would be used as frequently as they were using the main entrance. Okay? If it does not have any effect on, if it does not have any effect on the business, means whatever the entrance is, it will not have any effect on the traffic. Okay? The shoppers will still come to the center. If this were true, then don't you think the contention made in the passage, right, would be true? It would find strength. C says, there are many new tenants in the high rent main Indira Nagar Commercial Street who have moved in despite the road's widening project. This does not impact the proposal. How does it impact the proposal? It does not. The shopping center needs to do costly renovation before it can attract any client. Suppose you do costly renovation, but then you don't have proper entrance, that would create a problem. So in such a scenario, option B is the right choice. This actually strengthens the proposal, right? If the shoppers would not have any problem coming to the shopping center, even with the change in the entrance, right? That means the shopping center is not losing business, and this strengthens the proposal of the management. Hence, B actually strengthens it. Anubhav says A weakens. Read the question carefully, Anubhav. A says, most customers of the shopping center visit places located on Indira Nagar Commercial Street than those located in the adjoining street. Yes, if this were true, this would weaken. This would mean that the newly created entrance, right, would not be of any use to these people if the shoppers don't come. So A actually weakens the proposal. It does not strengthen it. B, on the other hand, strengthens the proposal that is being discussed. That is why the answer should be B and not A. All right. So this was tricky, but on the easier side. This was a tricky question, but it was not that difficult to answer. right? You just had to read between the lines and that would have given you the answer, right? So B is the answer for this question. Okay, let us look at one more question in this category. Now, in the first case, what did we see? We saw the strengthened question. In this case, it says, which of the following, if true, weakens the conclusion drawn above? Which one would weaken the conclusion? Right? First of all, let us find out what is the conclusion drawn. What does this question tell us? It begins like this. Opponents of the government's insistence on COVID vaccination for all argue that. Let us break the argument into pieces and then we will try to connect the dots. The opponents argue that, right? Who are the opponents? Opponents to what? The government's insistence on COVID vaccination for all. So the opponents argue that in a democratic society like ours, people have the right to take risk. Okay, the opponents say that people have the right to take risk on their health as long as they do not harm others. Okay, agreed? They argue that there are religious and personal reasons for many to shun vaccines, to ignore being vaccinated. Which option do you think actually weakens this? You have to go against this argument. Okay. A says COVID vaccines are free in government-run centers which are easily accessible. So if the vaccines are easily accessible, does that weaken the argument that people have the right to shun vaccines? B says any vaccinated person increases the risk of any unvaccinated person, increases the risk of infection for himself and others too. Definitely, if this were the case, then there is no reason why these so-called opponents should shun being vaccinated. Okay. B definitely weakens the statement, but let's look at C and D at the same time. C says there are a variety of vaccines available and people can choose their trusted brand. Okay, if people can choose their trusted brand, but these opponents are in any ways against the government's insistence on COVID vaccination. They don't want to get vaccinated. So even if there are varieties available, so will that prompt or inspire these people to get vaccinated? Not at all. B says the rate of fatalities, deaths from the corona infection is higher in states with lower vaccination numbers than those with higher vaccination numbers. If this were the case, the opponents will still not get vaccinated, okay, just because of this. So between A and D, between B and D, don't you think B should have been the better choice, right? If this were true in D, still there would be many people who would like to get vaccinated. Okay, the rate of fatalities from the corona infection is higher in states with lower vaccination. So how does this weaken the statement? B weakens the statement. An unvaccinated person increases the risk of infection for himself and others too. So between B and D, B is a better choice, although D throws some light, right? But then we are not talking about states in particular. We are talking about opponents of the government's insistence, of the government's plan, right? That is what we are talking about, the opponents, right? This option talks about the rate of fatalities being lower or higher. All right. Anupam says B because it causes harm as mentioned. Is this a logical line of thought, sir? right? You understand one thing over here. Why should the opponents talk about right to take risk on their health? It is not just about them taking risk. It's about, because of them, the number of people who might die because of their religious or personal reasons. So if an unvaccinated person increases the risk of infection for himself and others, then under any circumstances, the people should get vaccinated. If B were true, that actually weakens the statement. D talks about something else, Anubhav. Okay. Vidhi says, I think these are easy questions. Vidhi, the questions are going to be easy, right? No question is tough. It is just because we understand the questions, we're getting the answers, right? The questions are going to be absolutely easy. These are verbal logic questions. They are not going to be tricky as VARC or parajumbles or critical reasoning questions. So this is the section where you can score the maximum. Right? And that is the reason why we decided to give you, an insight into these questions, so that once you have the confidence of going with such questions, you can actually get the maximum mileage. You will be able to score more in these areas. Right? Okay. So with this being done, let us talk about yet another area, strong and weak statement. Okay? What makes the argument weak? What makes the argument strong? Let us understand this with the help of a few parameters. How do we answer the question? How is it relevant whether we talk about a sentence being strong or a sentence is weak? We have to see if the argument stated, does it support my point of view? Yes or no? If yes, does it make the statement strong? If no, does it make the sentence weak? Right? And we have to remember that even if it is a yes or a no statement, right, it does not have any effect on the sentence being strong or weak. Even a negative sentence can be strong and a positive sentence can be weak. Let us try and understand this with the help of an example. Okay, please look at this question. The question says, the following question is followed by two arguments. Identify whether the argument is strong or weak and mark them accordingly. Okay. Number one, Ketki, we cannot be precise about the number of questions that you might witness in NMAT, but 5 to 7 questions definitely cannot be ruled out, right? 5 to 7 questions will be there from this section. That's what I gauge. All right. And even if you try and attempt 3 to 4 questions out of 5 to 7, that's a job well done. Okay. 3 to 4 crucial marks. That is an add-on to your net percentile. All right. Okay. The statement says, should examinations be banned at primary and elementary school levels in schools in India? This is one area which we all have been grappling with since our childhood days. Nobody wants to write an exam, right? Should exams be banned? One says the present system of education, with its emphasis on rote learning, only adds to the stress of overburdened student. This means that the examination pattern and system has lost its shine and lost its glory. It has boiled down to rote learning. You just learn, go into the examination hall and you puke, right? So there is no learning happening. If this is what the exam going to be, then what is the use of having exams, right? Point. But 2 says, no, exams are a yardstick to measure a student's learning and ability to handle the next level, right? What are exams? A yardstick to measure a student's learning and his ability to handle the next level. Can he make a transition into the next level? Can he go to an elevated level next? So that's a yardstick. So if you look at the question carefully, you will see that one cannot be ignored. It talks about exams the futility of the exam because of the rote learning pattern. Okay, and such exams, they add to the worry, stress and burden of the students. If this is what an exam would look like, might as well let's think of abolishing it. So that's a very strong statement. 2 says no, you cannot abolish exams because they are a yardstick to measure a student's capability and learning. Even 2 is as strong a point as the first one. So first one was positive, the second one was negative, but both of them are equally strong. That is why the answer should have been both are strong statements. Okay, both are strong statements. One is strong, 2 is strong. See over here, in such a question, right? In such a question, we make a very humble mistake of bringing our own thought process into the question, right? If you choose a question on the basis of your personal bias or prejudice, the questions are going to be wrong, right? You have to keep your point of view aside, right? You think strictly in terms of the facts and figures present in front of you, right? You just cannot have a prejudiced view or a biased view when you actually answer such questions, remember, right? So you may agree with one contention, you may not agree with the other one, but that does not make the sentence weak or strong. It is not what we think, it's about what is right logically. So think from the have a third party approach to such questions, right? Keep your thought process aside a bit, okay, and then try to attack the question. Okay, that will help you understand the options in a much better way and in the right kind of light. All right, can we look at one more question? Can we do this? Okay, so what is the question? Should Madhya Pradesh be divided into 2 states? A very humble question being asked. Should MP be divided into 2 states? One says yes. Okay, and what are the reasons? One says yes, it will help the government maintain law and order in a better way as compared to the current situation. Help maintain law and order. Okay, point taken. It's a strong, very strong sentence. 2 says no, Madhya Pradesh is the best. Right? I like X teacher's class. What do you like about X teacher's class? That I don't know, but I like his class. Don't you think it is, shooting arrows in the dark? No, Madhya Pradesh is best. What kind of sentence is this, right? It doesn't make any sense. It is absurd. So 2 is an outright elimination. Why? Because it is neither strong nor weak, right? We don't get any perspective out of this particular sentence. Okay, so 2 is out. We should stay with 1, and that is why the answer should be only 1 is strong, because 1 gives us the reason why if you divide Madhya Pradesh, how it will help the government. It will help the government in terms of the maintenance of law and order and other things. So A should have been the right choice in this question. All right. So this was all about your strong and weak statement. Another very important question type happens to be the cause and effect. Okay. X causes Y. X causes Y, right? My finger is bleeding. Why? I have cut my finger. So what was the cause? I cut my finger. What was the effect? It is bleeding now. All right. So This is one area, Mahima, this is, please understand, you have a valid question, right? This is just for the sake of your comprehension and understanding, right? We are not actually discussing the concepts. We are just trying to understand how to actually have a perspective on solving the questions, right? The questions are not going to be tough, right? And these questions have been taken from different exams. So just because we are doing it easily does not make the questions difficult or easy. All right. Okay. Mahima is asking a question over here. What if even after dividing it may not? Now, we are not going to delve into what ifs, right? We are going to check. Now, if I say study hard and you will pass, what if I don't pass? Will that discourage me from studying hard, Mahima? Right? You have a valid question, but then these kind of questions don't actually, are based on, they are not based on what ifs. So we can actually move away what if and then take the question at its face value, dear, right? That's how you're going to look at the questions, right? Remove what ifs. Okay. How to solve cause and effect questions? It says read the statements carefully and see. Step 2 is very important. X, therefore Y. This is what I wanted to discuss with you right at the beginning. X, therefore Y. Okay. And see if the effect is logical or not. Cause and effect, that relationship has to be logical between the two statements. And there should be sufficient data and sufficient reason, for a question, for a statement to be cause or for a statement to be effect. Sometimes we see two effects, but they are not related to the same cause, and vice versa. Sometimes we see the causes, but they are not related to the same effect. I will show you how the questions will look like. Here we go. Please look at the question. The question says, in the last few years, the number of trains delayed or cancelled due to fog and other weather conditions has decreased significantly. All right, that's a good sign. 2 says, in the last few years, railway stations all over the country have got a facelift and there has been a tremendous improvement in the overall standard of hygiene and amenities in railway stations. Read the questions carefully. The question says, Mahima, I'm coming back to this question. Just give me some time there. A says, if 2 is the cause and 1 is the effect. B says, if both 1 and 2 are effects of independent causes. C says, if both are independent causes and not effects. And D says, if 1 is the cause and 2 is the effect. Which option are we going to choose practically and sensibly? Mahima, we just have to apply common sense over here, right? Knowledge will be there. You have to take the question at its face value there, right? So you cannot apply knowledge. You just apply the tricks and your common sense. The first question talks about, the first statement talks about the trains delayed or cancelled, right? The number of trains delayed or cancelled due to whatever has decreased. Okay, the trains getting late because of fog or the trains getting cancelled, this has decreased, right? When you say has decreased, it talks about an effect, okay, or a cause, whatever. 2 says, in the last few years, railway stations all over the country have got a facelift. Now tell me one thing. 2 talks about railway stations getting a facelift, okay. 2 talks about tremendous improvement happening in the overall standard of hygiene and amenities in the railway stations. can 2 be the cause of an effect of an effect in 1, or can 1 be the cause and 2 be the effect, or can these 2 be independent causes, right? These 2 are not actually related to each other. Trains getting delayed and now this has decreased has got nothing to do with the renovation work of the railway station. So these 2 are independent. They are exclusive of each other. That is why the option should have been both 1 and 2 are effects of independent causes, right? 1, A, C and D are out of question, right? 2 is cause and 1 is effect, not at all. We can read and observe and find out, right? If both are independent causes, no, they are the effects. They are not causes. They are something might have happened and that has caused a decrease in the delay of trains. Some people might have taken decision and that has resulted in the facelift of the station. So they are actually effects and not causes. If 1 is the cause and 2 is the effect, not at all. So B should have been the right choice over here. Okay, can we look at one more question? Let us see this question, guys. Let us read the statements. The statement says, the Kerala state government has experience in handling emergencies and epidemics such as the Kerala flood of 2018 and the Nipah outbreak in 2019. Alright, and 2 says, Kerala has been hailed for its prompt and effective response to COVID-19. If you admire a state, don't you think that it is the effect of something that you have done, it is the result of something that you have done previously? What has Kerala done? The Kerala government has experience in handling emergencies and epidemics such as floods and the Nipah outbreak, and they have handled the situations so effectively that they have been hailed for their prompt and effective response to COVID-19. So in this question, we are talking about calamities, we are talking about outbreaks, and that is the reason the answer should be 1 is the cause and 2 is the effect, right? Classic Rider says B, Deepak says C. No, Deepak, there, over here the answer should have been D, because if you look at the question and the facts being discussed in the question, the Kerala government has experience in what? Handling emergencies. Look at this word, emergencies. And COVID-19 is an emergency, right? COVID-19 is an emergency. So these 2 are interrelated. They are gridlocked, right? They are interrelated. And that is the reason you must choose D and not B and C, right? It falls under the definition of emergency, dear. And that is why B and C should not be the option. I hope you understand why D should have been the option. Yes? So that is how you should be looking at the questions. Okay? Random choice, you should be very, very careful about. Don't make random choices. Just because C or B seems plausible, that does not mean that they are true. Right? There's a difference between being true and being apparent. Right? So B and C may look good to you, but the option that sits absolutely tight is D in this case, because we're talking about emergencies. Okay, so D should have been the right answer. I hope you have understood. All right, can we look at one more question? So what does statement 1 tell us? Statement 1 tells us many residents of Ward X of the city are suffering from stomach ailments and symptoms similar to food poisoning. And 2 says a popular chain restaurant was sealed by the Food Standards Authority for not meeting the hygiene standards in the kitchen. It is very, very clear that many residents suffering from stomach ailment is the cause, and this has an effect when this restaurant was sealed. Okay, now you might come up with the contention, sir, what has this statement got to do with 1? But if you look at the connection over here, right, these people were suffering from stomach ailments and symptoms of food poisoning, and this restaurant is in the business of food. Probably they might have consumed some food from restaurants like these, and that might have resulted in their suffering. So C is the cause and 2 is the effect. So the answer over here should be D. 1 is the cause and 2 is the effect. This was an easy question. Okay, this was a fairly easy question, and most of you probably would have got this one right. Okay, so these questions were based on cause and effect. And now we are going to see a few questions on Syllogs. NMAT coming up, IFT coming up, SNAP coming up. You may find 2 to 3 questions on syllogisms. Okay. So what are syllogs? We try to understand the questions with the help of diagrams, right? So all X are Y. How do we show it? All X are Y. Right? Some X are Y, some X are Y. So we have to try and figure out the veracity of the statements, the truthfulness of the statements by drawing some diagrams over here. Okay? And then we will try to find out the conclusion. Okay? Statement 1 says, no paper is a book. Statement 2 says some books are paperbacks. Conclusion is all paperbacks being books is a possibility and no paperback is paper. The conclusion, the options are only conclusion 1 follows. B says only conclusion 2 follows. C says both conclusions follow, and D says neither conclusion follows. First of all, these are easy questions. Okay, you just have to have the logic in place. All right, and try to understand there can be many conclusions and many possibilities, and all possibilities may sound true and right. You just have to figure out the best possibility. All right, all the possible answers, all the possible conclusions cannot be a valid one. You just have to see which conclusion directly flows from the statement. So let us try and understand this question with the help of an example. No paper is a book, some books are paperbacks. So can we say this? No paper is a book and some books are paperbacks. Okay, so this is a possibility. And then some books are paperbacks. What was the conclusion? All paperbacks being books is a possibility and no paperback is a paper. If you look at the question, all paperbacks being books, so you consider the paperbacks to be books, so that's a possibility, right? And the third one says paper. What was the third conclusion? Okay, no paperback is a paper. That was second one. So these are the three possible cases that you can have in front of you. All right. So in this case, if this were the possibilities, the answer over here should have been A, only conclusion 1 follows. Okay. What is conclusion 1? All paperbacks being books is a possibility. So A should have been the answer. Mahima got it right. All right. Great going, Mahima. Can we look at one more question? Okay. This is question number 17 and let us attack the question. What does it say? All beds are fruit. Fruit is wood. Beds are wood. Let's quickly do it. Cakes are soft. Toffees are soft. Cakes are toffees. Some books are fiction, all fiction are stories, and some books are stories. Let's go back and forth through the slides. All beds are fruit, fruit is wood, means fruit is wood, so beds are wood. Can this be proven? All beds are woods, all beds are fruit, fruit is wood, so beds are wood. Is it a valid conclusion? Yes, it is. Cakes are soft. Toffees are soft. Cakes are toffees. Can it be concluded? It cannot be concluded. Some books are fiction. Yes, some books are fiction. Look at the Venn diagram. All fictions are stories. All fictions are stories. Some books are stories. Some books are stories. Can it be driven home? It can be driven home. So this is a valid conclusion. Hence, your answer should be 1 and 3. A was the answer choice. Okay. So these were some of the questions which I thought I should discuss with you. Right. Please put your common sense in the right place. Right. One of you asked me this question. Sir, can I use my common knowledge? Right. You can use your common sense. Use general knowledge until and unless it is asked for, right? And don't try to solve, read and reread the question, right? Read the question, get the information and get going with the answer. Solve it instantly. But having said that, you should be very, very careful with the logic that you have actually studied so far, revised so far with the mentors, okay? These are the tricks that if you apply on the questions, you may be able to answer the questions in no time at all. Okay, so tomorrow again we are going to join with yet another exciting session. Please join us, follow us on Instagram, and I wish you all the very best for your upcoming exams. With that being said, it's a wrap from my side. See you in the next class. Good night and stay blessed. Thank you so much.